Good morning, everyone. So, let's talk about something really serious. Now, yesterday, I saw, first it was, I think, Pinball talked about it, and then it was, I think it was Tim Pool talked about it as well. And I went and looked at the website and everything. I've never actually heard of the SPLC. And from looking at their website, I think it's just nothing but a complete bunch of bullshit, far leftists, just looking at it. But regardless of, what my views on them are, they had a poll done, and the results were quite alarming. Now, between 40 and 50% of both young Democrat men and Republican women, young Democrat men and young Republican women, between 40 and 50% support assassinating of politics or opposing politicians. Now, this is very alarming, very concerning. It's not surprising. Now, the poll was stating that the older generation of both the left and the right were, the complete opposite. They were not supporting of the assassination of opposing politics. It was a very low percentage that one of the older generation. And there's speculation because the older people know war and the younger generation doesn't know war like they do. Now, while that is, a good possibility, it is irrelevant when the older population loses their voice, or they die out, or they fade away, and the newer generation, or the younger generation, is the ones making all the decisions. I think that civil war is inevitable with the way that everything is going right now. With the younger generation being more accepting of this extreme violence, they're going to, not all, but there's going to be a number of them that are going to teach their kids their view and their view only, and citing that violence is going to be acceptable for them too. And this is just going to create when this current generation goes away, and the older generation, when they go away, the younger generation will then go into power, which this younger generation is more accepting of violence. And then their younger generation, the generation after them, is probably going to be even more accepting of violence. So if it doesn't happen within the next 10 or 20 years, it'll definitely probably happen within the next 30 or 40 years. And my timeline could be way off. It could be, the chances of civil war could definitely happen before within the next 10 years. That is definitely a possibility. And I think really one of the only things that is keeping civil war from happening is the older generation, to an extent. Now, regardless of, what I say, I do believe civil war is coming. Sooner or later, it will be here, and we will have another civil war in this country. This country is too divided to stay together. We are everyone hates each other in this country. There's so much hatred. There is already so much violence. And Roe versus Wade is enough to turn this country upside down on its own. Now we've got a bunch of shootings happening in the United States. Go figure, we're getting close to elections. Put two and two together. I'm not saying anything. Now we've got the division on gun control, which, I'm sure my stance on gun control is pretty much identical to everyone else's over here, which is gun control doesn't do anything, and real gun control is shot placement. So we've got those two very, very, very big divides right there, and then, what is it, I think the Clinton case, or whatever it is, the whole justice system is dead in this country. Rule of law is slowly dying. We've got another division there. Yeah, it's coming. It's definitely on its way. And the only way to prepare for something like this, make sure, it feels like a broken record. Food, water, food, water, food, water. Make sure you have food and water. Make sure you have shelter. Make sure you have food, water, and shelter. Feels like a broken record. But, it's the truth. You need to have food, water, and shelter. Make sure you have, a safe place to live. Make sure you have the water you need for a daily basis. 1 gallon of water per person per day for just drinking water only. That's excluding water for showering, cleaning, cooking, shit like that. Make sure you have enough food supply to last you, I would say, a year. And if you don't have a year's worth of food, then that's fine, as long as you're still stacking food and rotating out your preps. That's fine. You're doing what you can. And then make sure you have the ability to protect your preps and your home. Be it whatever weapon you can have, you can have. And if that weapon just so happens to take projectiles, make sure you have as many of those as you physically possibly legally can. Because, guys, if it does turn into a civil war, it's not going to be like the original American Civil War, where you've got, North versus South, lining up in a line and firing at each other, with uniforms. It ain't going to be anything like that, guys. It's going to be a lot different. It's going to be third generation, fourth generation warfare. It's going to be guerrilla warfare. You're not going to know who your enemy is. They're going to be wearing civilian clothes. So you're going to have to be ready to protect yourself anywhere and everywhere. Get that concealed carry license. If you live in a state where it's legal to conceal and or open carry, good on you. I live in a state where it's legal to open carry without a license. I love that. But at the same time, I don't 100% agree with open carry. I 100% agree. If you want to open carry, then I will 100% support your decision to open carry. But me personally, I would rather not open carry. I don't want to be seen as a target. And while it could be considered a deterrent for some, it could also be considered a target for others. So, open carry can go 50-50. Concealed carry, they don't know you have it, unless they have a good eye and it's, clear that you're concealed carrying. But you should be carrying some sort of self-defense tool at all times, no matter where you go, no matter where you are. Please carry some sort of self-defense, because we're getting into some bad times. Almost half of young Democrat men and almost half of young Republican women support assassinations, and then I think it's either slightly lower or slightly higher number of the same people support violence against opposing political parties. Guys, we're getting into some scary time. We're getting into some disturbing time. We're getting into some dangerous times. So make sure you have your self-defense tools. Make sure they're readily available, because your life is worth a lot. Your family's life is worth a lot. Your kids' lives are worth even more. So make sure you're ready to defend yourself. Make sure you're ready to defend others in your family, your loved ones, your friends, or even random strangers that are defenseless. It's getting crazy out there, and we may not be Joe Biden moment. We may not be seeing it physically yet, but it's in here. There's a lot of people that are thinking of violence. They may not be projecting violence physically yet, but they are manifesting violence mentally. So we've got to be ready for that. Not only do we need to have our self-defense tools, but guys, if we go into a civil war, the differences between everybody in the United States is so vast. I don't think that we will be able to continue to stay a country or remain being one united country. I think that we could balkanize. I think we could become many different countries within North America within the upcoming foreseeable future. Within our lifetime, I think that we could definitely see multiple countries in North America form. So another thing to keep very safe, which nobody talks about, is your legal documents. Keep your birth certificate, your social security card, your identification cards, shit like that. Keep them in a fireproof, waterproof safe or something, container or whatever. Keep that information, keep those documents in paper form, in physical form, safe, because you don't want to become stateless. If new nations are formed, you do not want to become stateless. And what being stateless is not belonging to a country. You don't have citizenship to any country. That's what stateless is. And stateless people have a very, 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 very hard time dealing with life, because not having citizenship to any country is very difficult. It's very, very hard for you to get a job, a legit job anywhere. So if new countries are formed in North America, you're gonna want those identifying documents and birth certificate on hand if new governments are formed, that way, you're not, or that way you have proof that you were born in that area, or you were born where you were, and you can become a citizen of whatever new nation is formed, or whatever new government is formed. You can become a part of that and do things legally that way. Because if a country falls, if a country ceases to exist, a new country will form where that old one was, be it one new country or multiple new countries. And odds are you're going to need proof that you were from that area to become a citizen of that new country. Otherwise, you could very well become stateless, and your life could become a living hell. Now, there are people who are stateless who have a decent life, but they live in certain areas which allow stateless people to have a decent life. There are some countries that will allow stateless people to freely pass through their country, but you have to exit the country within a certain amount of time. There's some countries that will deport anyone who's stateless to where they would deport them. I don't know. But these are just some important things to think about, guys. And I never, ever hear anyone ever talking about stateless people in the prepping community. And I don't really even know if the prepping community even realizes what stateless is. There's a lot of negativity behind being stateless. You just don't want to be stateless. So make sure you keep those documents safe. Keep them in a container that is fireproof, waterproof. That way, if there's a fire, it's not going to destroy those documents. If there's a flood, it's not going to get in those. Those documents aren't going to be destroyed by water or whatever. So keep those documents safe. Stay armed to the best you can, and be ready. Because people are manifesting bad thoughts in their mind, and God only knows how long they're going to manifest those thoughts into the physical form. Be ready, stay prepared, and have a good one.